You send the message, they see the read receipt. Hours tick by. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, memories replay in your mind. Every word you didn't say, every hint of love you withheld, every apology unoffered. You're raw, you're hurt, and you believe silence is failure. But what if your silence is the battlefield you reclaim? We're taught that communication heals, that explaining, clarifying, convincing, that's how relationships survive. But the Stoics teach something deeper. Not every battle demands your voice. In fact, sometimes it's your voice that robs you of power. Part 1, when you're silent, you regain the battlefield of power. Silence as a strategy, not a surrender. Imagine two armies colliding in a plain, swords drawn. One leader screams orders, exposes himself in rage, and tries to overwhelm the enemy with noise. The other stands still, calm, waiting. He waits until the chaos falls silent, and then he takes control. That waiting is not fear, it is discipline, it is strategy. That's what Stoic silence looks like, calculated stillness that reclaims the battlefield of inner authority. Marcus Aurelius instructs, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. On the contrary, it means everything is happening, but within your control. Why speaking without control is giving power away. When you chase someone with your words, long texts, messages meant to explain, to justify, you are handing over your power. You're saying, my peace depends on your response. That's handing them the steering wheel of your emotional reality. You've tried to negotiate respect, you've bargained for closure, yet closure buys nothing if the recipient refuses to acknowledge it. Epictetus warned. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. When you chase understanding, you validate the other person's control over your worth. That's not your definition of peace, that's emotional debt. Silence as a mirror. Here's the paradox. Silence often spurs more reflection in others than any argument ever could. When you stop chasing, suddenly your absence becomes a mirror. They see not your presence, but the void left behind. They feel not your words, but the question, why am I no longer fighting to keep this connection? That question cannot be silenced. Silence echoes where words evaporate. The Stoic writer Seneca reminds us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Let silence be a reality test. Let them see that their choices, not your explanations, constructed the space. Modern example about Mandela's still authority. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years without speaking publicly about his cause. Yet when he finally stepped into leadership, his voice carried far more weight than decades of speech ever could. His silence in prison wasn't erasure, it was preparation. It gave his future the authority no apology or explanation could have offered. That is the power of disciplined absence. Silence is discipline, not denial. Silence doesn't mean you ignore, it means you choose when to respond or whether to respond at all. Silence doesn't suppress emotion, it governs it. You feel, you process. And you act or refuse to act not in reaction but in alignment with principle. When your emotional response is delayed, measured, grounded in your values, not in impulse, you no longer give away your mind to chaos. What you gain when you stop explaining. Self-possession, your identity isn't validated by someone else's acknowledgement. It stands firm in your knowing. Clarity, you stop rehearsing your worth and start demonstrating it through presence and integrity. Freedom, silence removes you from emotional bargaining. Your peace becomes non-negotiable. How to train this discipline. Pause before reacting. Let the urge to text, to speak, to explain pass. Ask, is an explanation needed? Is it even possible? If not, be still. Shift your intention. Transform explanation into reflection. Let your silence be your statement. Silence is not weakness, it's sovereignty. Stoicism teaches that true strength isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering yourself. When you choose silence, you reclaim your emotional autonomy. You refuse to allow your identity to be shaped by someone who already decided not to see you. Your voice is not quieter, it's simply no longer given to those who would misuse it. This is the turning point. Silence is not emptiness, it's presence, it's choice, it's the battlefield reclaimed. You've paused not because you have nothing to say, but because you're wiser than to fight on someone else's terms. Your silence is strategic. Your peace is regained. That's not withdrawal, that's triumph. Let your silence speak for you. Part 2, the art of stillness. Why not reacting is a power move. When someone disrespects you, insults you, or even betrays your trust, your first instinct might be to explain yourself or to strike back. You want to be understood. You want to be vindicated, but the Stoics teach a radical reversal. Do nothing, say nothing, let silence speak. Why? Because silence is not emptiness. It is a full, deliberate act of self-control. To the Stoics, the person who reacts is the one who has already surrendered power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you react impulsively, you're no longer in control. You've given someone else the steering wheel to your emotional state. But when you stay silent, you are reclaiming authority over the one thing the Stoics say is always within your control. Your mind. Silence in the face of emotional provocation isn't weakness, it's restraint. And restraint is strength disguised as serenity. Let's take an example from real life. Michelle Obama. When critics tried to reduce her legacy to fashion choices or tossed around baseless, racially charged insults during her time as First Lady, she rarely responded in kind. In her memoir Becoming, she reflects on the dignity of silence. When they go low, we go high. Her stillness was not apathy. It was a powerful message that she would not let noise dictate her self-worth. Her silence was armor. This is Stoicism in motion, choosing your response, not letting it be dictated by others. And yet this kind of silence isn't just about moral superiority, it has tactical value. Think about it. When someone expects you to argue, to defend, to react, and they are left with their own discomfort. Their manipulation fails to land, their drama has no fuel, your silence exposes them. This is the core of what Epictetus taught. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You don't need to explain why you walked away. You don't need to tell someone why they hurt you. Your silence is the explanation. Your absence is the boundary. And your refusal to react is the punishment. But let's be clear, Stoic silence is not avoidance. It's not the cold shoulder. It's not passive-aggressive punishment. True Stoic silence is born of inner confidence and clarity. You are silent not because you lack words, but because your words would serve no purpose. They would be wasted on a mind not ready to listen, or on a heart not capable of change. There's another modern figure who embodies this. Keanu Reeves, rarely drawn into drama, he has faced personal loss, media rumors, and gossip with calm, measured presence. He doesn't chase validation, he doesn't explain himself, he just acts quietly, consistently, intentionally. He lets his life speak. That's the path Stoicism offers you. Instead of saying, "Let me explain," you say, "Let me demonstrate." Instead of arguing, you observe. Instead of proving your worth, you embody it. This kind of silence is magnetic. People feel it. They sense something unshakable about you. Because in a world obsessed with noise, restraint is rare, and rare things are powerful. Here is how you can begin to practice this today. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause, feel the urge to react, but do not act, just breathe. Ask yourself, will anything I say bring peace to this moment? If the answer is no, say nothing, walk away. Or respond with a calm, concise line like, "I'll think about that." This kind of deliberate silence is a practice. It doesn't come overnight, but every time you choose it, you grow stronger. You reclaim more of your inner authority. At its core, Stoic silence is not about others. It's about you. It's about becoming a person who cannot be shaken by opinions, manipulation, or chaos. Because here's the truth. If you can master your impulse to react, you can master almost anything in life. You become the calm in the storm, not because you avoid the storm, but because you are the storm's still center. In the words of Seneca, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Your silence isn't submission, it's sovereignty. Part 3, the silent exit, when walking away is louder than words. There comes a time when you must realize that your silence is not surrender, it is strategy. Walking away done in calm resolve is not avoidance. It's a clear declaration. I no longer give my energy to what disturbs my peace. In modern life, we're conditioned to equate closure with confrontation. If someone wrongs you, you're expected to explain your pain, demand accountability, and defend your perspective until the other party finally gets it. But the Stoics taught something radically different. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," and often the most powerful message is no message at all. To walk away in silence is not to lose your voice, but to reclaim your value. When someone disrespects you, disregards your boundaries, or betrays your trust, your ego may urge you to speak up, not out of principle, but out of pride. You may feel compelled to make them understand, to vindicate your character, to prove your pain is real. But what if the true act of strength isn't found in proving anything, but in detaching from the need to prove it? Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That includes craving explanations, recognition, or apologies from those who lack the capacity or willingness to offer them. When you walk away, you're not abandoning the battlefield. You're refusing to fight a war that has already cost you too much. Stillness doesn't mean passivity, it means precision. In Stoicism, walking away isn't about running from difficulty, it's about moving toward clarity. Epictetus emphasized, keep your attention focused entirely on what is truly your own concern. When you silently exit from someone's chaos, manipulation, or drama, you are making a clean distinction. Their dysfunction is not my responsibility. Their behavior is not my burden. You cannot change someone by pleading, debating, or over-explaining. True change, the Stoics knew, comes from within, and only when the person is ready. Until then, your words will fall on deaf ears. Your silence, however, may echo. It may not change them, but it will protect you. The loudest exits are often the quietest. In modern culture, we celebrate dramatic farewells, slamming doors, emotional speeches, grand declarations, but those are performances. They satisfy the ego, not the soul. The Stoic exit is different. It is calm. It is firm. It leaves no emotional residue because it requires no validation. Imagine a person in a burning building. They don't announce, argue, or plead for others to understand why they must leave. They simply leave because staying would mean destruction. That's the Stoic mindset. When a situation becomes toxic, when a relationship corrodes your character, or when staying begins to violate your principles, the most rational act is to go. Not in rage, not in sorrow, but in self-respect. When you exit in silence, you teach without preaching. Your absence becomes the most eloquent teacher. Those who took you for granted begin to feel the space you used to occupy. Those who dismissed your worth begin to question their own certainty. Your silence becomes their mirror, and this is not about revenge, it's about restoration. You're not walking away to hurt them, you're walking away to heal you. The Stoics didn't advocate silence out of cowardice, they saw it as an act of wisdom. Noise is reactive, silence is deliberate. Marcus Aurelius advised, if someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For it is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone. But when someone refuses to see the truth, denies their responsibility, or plays mind games, you owe them nothing further. Your growth does not require their awareness. Your peace does not depend on their apology. Leaving quietly is the final stage of self-mastery. It means you have nothing to prove, nothing to defend, and nothing to regret. You have weighed the situation through the lens of reason, not emotion, and you've concluded, without drama, that it is no longer aligned with your path. This kind of departure isn't cold, it's courageous. It says, I respect myself enough to let go, even when the other person doesn't understand why. And maybe they never will. That's not your concern. As Epictetus said, some things are up to us and some things are not. Their understanding is not up to you. Your exit is. In the end, silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of power. And when you walk away without a word, you're not just leaving a situation, you're stepping back into your integrity, into your centeredness, into the kind of life the Stoics believed was worth living, one led not by impulse but by purpose. So if you're facing a moment where words would only muddy the truth, pause, breathe, then walk away. And let that silence say everything. Part 4, non-reaction, is the ultimate response. How stillness exposes the truth. In a world obsessed with reaction, where speed is celebrated and impulsivity rewarded, choosing stillness can feel countercultural, even radical. But the Stoics understood something most people overlook. When you refuse to react, you strip chaos of its fuel. You shift the power balance without saying a word. Non-reaction isn't passivity, it's precision. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. To understand the gravity of this idea, we turn to the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, who once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. This is the first and most challenging layer of non-reaction, recognizing that you don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe chaos your outrage. You don't owe insult your retaliation. Most people feel compelled to answer every slight, defend every opinion, prove every point. But Marcus reminds us we have another option, the option to be still, the option to not engage. Why non-reaction isn't silence but strength. Stoicism teaches that virtue lies in controlling our responses, not in controlling the world. The moment you react impulsively, whether in anger, defensiveness, or even self-righteousness, you surrender your peace to someone else's agenda. Your emotional state becomes dictated by external events. That is the opposite of Stoic mastery. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This is a humbling insight. People may try to provoke you, but it's your interpretation, your agreement, that gives their words meaning. When you remain unmoved, you expose the truth. Their power over you is an illusion. Think of a match. It cannot spark unless there's friction. Non-reaction denies the friction. It robs the match of oxygen. The result, the flame dies in the fingers of the one who lit it. Stillness as a mirror, but there's another layer here that goes deeper. Stillness doesn't just protect your peace, it reveals the motives of others. When you do not react, you force others to confront their own behavior without the distraction of your response. Non-reaction becomes a mirror. If someone is lying, your silence makes their lie echo louder. If they are angry, your calmness shows how far they've lost control. If they're seeking drama, your refusal to participate turns their outburst into a one-person performance. You don't have to expose people, your stillness does that for you. Seneca phrased this idea with precision. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Ironically, your adversity, your trial by fire, is often someone else's bad behavior. When you refuse to react, you prove yourself. You stand in stark contrast to chaos. You show the difference between a person led by their emotions and a person guided by reason. Let's bring this into a modern setting. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone publicly criticizes you, unjustly, maybe even maliciously. Every nerve in your body wants to fire back, but if you do, you look defensive, emotional, possibly guilty. Instead, you pause, you breathe, you allow the room to sit in the discomfort of what was just said. Suddenly, it's not your reaction that people remember, it's the tone and character of the accuser. Your stillness gave space for the truth to emerge. This isn't theoretical, it's tactical. In negotiations, silence is often more unsettling than aggression. In relationships, non-reaction signals maturity. In leadership, it projects calm authority. Wherever ego clamors for a response, stillness is a weapon of clarity. Stillness is not suppression, let the noise expose itself. One caution. Stoic non-reaction is not emotional repression. The Stoics never said you shouldn't feel. They said you should not be ruled by feelings. The goal is not to become a robot, but to become a steward of your emotions, not their slave. Stillness, then, is the discipline of feeling fully, but choosing wisely. You may feel anger, but you do not lash out. You may feel hurt, but you do not retaliate. You allow the emotion to arise, and then you respond or don't from a place of intention. That's the heart of Stoicism, choice, not reaction. In the end, non-reaction is not just about self-protection, it's a gift you give to the situation. It gives others the opportunity to hear themselves, to recognize their tone, to confront their own story without the distraction of your defense. You don't need to clap back to reveal the truth. Sometimes the greatest exposure comes from what you don't say. Silence echoes where noise dissipates. So when you're misunderstood, maligned, misquoted, don't scramble to fix it. Don't exhaust yourself correcting the narrative. Trust that stillness will clarify what chaos distorts. Trust that the truth defends itself over time. In a noisy world, your calm is confrontation. In a reactive world, your restraint is rebellion. And in a dishonest world, your stillness is truth. Part 5, Power Without a Sound. The invisible strength of emotional control. There's a kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't lash out or demand to be seen. It doesn't announce itself with bravado or dominance. In fact, it often goes unnoticed, mistaken for passivity or indifference. But this is the strength that Stoicism regards most highly, the quiet, internal mastery of one's emotions. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And in that one line lies the foundation of true power, not the kind that intimidates others, but the kind that governs the self. To be unshaken in a world full of chaos, that is strength. To remain calm when provoked, to stay principled when slandered, to maintain inner stillness when everything around you is tempting you to react, this is not weakness. This is discipline. This is dignity. The Stoics didn't believe in emotional suppression. That's a misunderstanding. They believed in emotional governance. They knew that emotions, like storms, were natural, but that we should not let ourselves be ruled by their turbulence. Think about it, anyone can scream when they're angry. Anyone can break things or lash out or send a text they'll regret. That doesn't take strength, that takes zero resistance. What takes strength is to feel the heat rise inside you and choose not to be consumed by it. What takes power is to notice the urge to retaliate and instead choose silence, choose patience, choose principle. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, faced betrayal, manipulation, and endless demands from those around him. And yet in his meditations, he reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That is where emotional control begins, in the recognition that reacting to life is not living, it's being lived by circumstance. But when you pause, when you choose your response deliberately, you reclaim authorship over your own story. Let's ground this with a modern example, Michelle Obama. Throughout her years in the public eye, she was misrepresented, ridiculed, and attacked, sometimes in the most personal and demeaning ways. Yet she became known not for her retaliation, but for her poise. Her quiet dignity became her trademark. She once said, "When they go low, we go high." That is not just a political slogan, it's a Stoic maxim. It's a reminder that power isn't about controlling others, it's about not letting others control you. And what's more, That kind of self-restraint doesn't just serve your peace, it unsettles those who wish to provoke you. Because when someone tries to draw you into chaos and you don't take the bait, you don't just keep your dignity, you reveal their desperation. Your calm becomes a mirror that reflects their lack of control. But let's be honest. Choosing emotional restraint isn't easy. It requires you to face the discomfort rather than discharge it. It requires you to sit with anger, fear, sadness, and let them rise and fall without turning them into weapons. This is why Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Because in every situation, there's a moment, sometimes just a sliver of a second, where you can pause and decide. Will I act according to principle, or will I let the emotion dictate my move? That moment is the battlefield of the soul. You see, Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. It's about not becoming a slave to fleeting emotions. It's about maintaining your integrity even when every part of you wants to break character. That's real power, power without noise, power without spectacle, and ironically, that kind of power is the most enduring. The people who scream to prove their strength are forgotten quickly. The ones who move through the world with grace, with steadiness, with composure, they leave a deeper impression. Their strength whispers, but it echoes for a lifetime. The world will always test your emotions. People will poke at your insecurities, lie about you, try to provoke a reaction. But the Stoic knows that's not your real fight. The real test is within. The real enemy is the part of you that wants to throw away your values for the sake of a quick release. So the next time you're tempted to react, pause. In that pause, you're doing something rare. You're becoming unshakable. In that stillness, you're asserting a deeper strength, one that doesn't need applause or retaliation. Let the world rage on. You stay composed, because power without a sound is not weakness. It is the highest form of discipline. It is the quiet courage to remain true to yourself, even when no one's watching. That is Stoicism. That is strength, and it speaks volumes even in silence. Part 6, when the strongest response is no response. Let karma finish the conversation. There are moments in life when you will feel the deep ache of injustice, when words have been twisted, intentions misunderstood, and your silence mistaken for weakness. The instinct, almost primal, is to defend, to clarify, to argue until you're blue in the face. But the Stoic path asks something different of you. It asks you to do what is most difficult for the modern ego, to say nothing at all. Because sometimes the strongest response is no response. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That is not merely a call for restraint, it is a radical rejection of the need to engage on someone else's terms. To respond is to enter their battlefield, to stay silent is to rise above it. Silence is not passive, it is not avoidance. In the Stoic framework, silence is presence, it is awareness. It is the rejection of ego's demand to be right, to be seen, to be justified in the eyes of those who never tried to understand you in the first place. There's a reason Epictetus taught his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your reaction, or the withholding of it, is the only true domain you control. The slander, the betrayal, the manipulation, these belong to the one who commits them. Your soul remains untouched unless you hand it over in retaliation. In silence, you are not weak, you are conserving your strength. You are refusing to bleed energy into a wound that someone else opened. And here's the paradox. The more calmly you walk away, the louder your silence echoes in the minds of those who sought your destruction. Not because you've played a psychological game, but because you've chosen a level of self-mastery that they cannot access. Let karma speak in your absence. Karma, in its most Stoic interpretation, isn't some cosmic force of justice that evens the scales with fire and thunder. It's much quieter than that. Karma is consequence. It's the internal unraveling that happens when someone chooses cruelty over compassion, ego over character, deceit over truth. You don't need to prove their wrongs. You don't need to explain your value. The Stoic understands life has a way of delivering consequences in whispers, not in shouts. Consider the story of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, many expected him to emerge embittered, thirsty for vengeance. But Mandela remained mostly silent on his suffering. He did not use his voice to wound his oppressors. He used his silence as a foundation for dignity. His response was no response to those who had dehumanized him. Instead, he acted, he led, he became something no one expected, a healer. In doing so, karma unfolded not through punishment, but through the exposed moral bankruptcy of the apartheid regime. The silence Mandela carried wasn't emptiness, it was principled stillness. How does this relate to your life? Think of the relationship where you were lied to, the colleague who betrayed your trust, the friend who vanished when you needed them most. The pull is always to confront, to force a reckoning, but most of the time they already know. They just don't want to admit it, and by engaging, you give them another chance to shift blame, to twist reality, to bait you into a performance you never agreed to audition for. When you stay silent, you cut off the oxygen supply to their narrative. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is content with himself." This is not arrogance, this is liberation. It means you no longer outsource your peace to the understanding or apology of others. You do not need them to get it, you do not need them to see your side, because you have already done the harder thing. You've seen yourself clearly. You've faced your own flaws and refused to become like those who wronged you. And in that self-possession, your silence becomes power. Power not to dominate, but to stand still in the storm and say nothing. Because truth doesn't need a megaphone, it only needs time. This is what so few understand about Stoicism. It's not about bottling up emotions or pretending things don't hurt. It's about feeling everything fully and still choosing the higher path. It's the ability to carry pain without projecting it. To recognize injustice without obsessing over vengeance. To hold your boundaries without announcing them at full volume. Letting karma finish the conversation means you step back and let the natural order take its course. It may not happen on your timeline, it may not look like the kind of justice your heart craves, but the Stoics knew what matters most is who you become in the waiting. Your job is not to deliver the lesson, your job is to learn yours. When you choose silence in the face of cruelty, you're not giving up, you're stepping into a deeper kind of integrity. You are allowing time, truth, and consequence to do their quiet work without staining your character in the process. As the Roman poet Juvenal once warned, revenge is always the weak pleasure of a little and narrow mind. The wiser mind, it lets go, it lets karma speak, and in that you'll find what the Stoics cherished most, not the illusion of justice, but the freedom of detachment. Part 7, Karma doesn't knock loudly. It shows up in isolation, regret, and repetition. Karma is rarely cinematic. It doesn't arrive wrapped in thunder, nor does it publicly humiliate those who have wronged you in some poetic twist of fate. More often, it whispers through sleepless nights, echoes through empty rooms, and repeats itself in cycles of poor choices and lost connections. The Stoics did not speak of karma in mystical terms, but they understood that life has a way of giving each of us exactly what our actions invite, whether we recognize it or not. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. In other words, what we dwell on, how we act, and how we respond to others, these things shape our reality from the inside out. Those who operate from cruelty, deception, or selfishness may not face public punishment, but they suffer the invisible consequence of becoming their own jailer. Their punishment is internal, an erosion of peace, a gnawing sense of being disconnected, and a life that slowly collapses from the inside. And that is how karma works, not through grand spectacle, but through internal decay. Isolation is the first whisper. The Stoics teach us that our highest good comes from within, not from social approval or material accumulation. When someone manipulates, betrays, or lies to others, they may seem successful or even admired for a time. But virtue, the only true good, cannot coexist with duplicity. Eventually, their relationships fracture. Trust becomes elusive. People distance themselves even if they can't explain why. The soul can feel when something is off, when a person cannot be relied upon or spoken to in truth. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Those who ignore this guideline may find themselves surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. This is karma's first act, not punishment, but separation. Isolation is not a loud announcement. It's a slow realization that the room has emptied and no one is listening anymore. Regret is the second blow. Seneca believed that guilt and regret are not enemies, but teachers, warning us when we've strayed from virtue. But for those who act without honor, who harm others without reflection, regret arrives later and with teeth. It may come in the silence after a once close friend is gone. It may creep in during the stillness between accomplishments when no one is left to celebrate with. It may arrive as a moment of clarity in a therapist's chair or a flash of pain while staring at an old photograph. The regret isn't always about what they did. Often, it's about who they became in the process. Epictetus warned, "You become what you give your attention to." And when that attention has been directed toward control, ego, and manipulation, the soul quietly becomes a reflection of those choices. There is no peace in that version of the self, only a growing awareness that they traded connection for control and authenticity for dominance. This is the karma they cannot escape, not public humiliation but private reckoning, repetition. The loop that doesn't end. Here's the final stroke of karma, and perhaps the most devastating: repetition. Those who have not learned from their past wounds and mistakes are doomed to recreate them. The same behaviors, the same outcomes, the same fractures. In psychological terms, it's called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate situations from the past in an attempt to master them. In Stoic terms, it's simply the result of a person failing to apply reason to experience. Epictetus taught that difficulties show men what they are. But if a person refuses to reflect, if they continue to externalize blame and avoid discomfort, they remain blind to the lessons that suffering brings. As a result, life keeps serving the same dish over and over. New partners, same dynamic. New job, same betrayal. New city, same loneliness. This is karma, not as supernatural justice, but as a psychological and philosophical inevitability. The universe doesn't need to punish someone who acts without virtue. They do it to themselves by living in a loop of their own making. A modern example, Elizabeth Holmes. Look no further than the story of Elizabeth Holmes, once the darling of Silicon Valley. Her company, the Ranos, promised revolutionary blood testing technology. The hype was enormous, but it turned out the technology didn't work and she knew it. Instead of course-correcting, she doubled down, lied to investors, misled the public, controlled the narrative. For years she seemed to win, but the truth has its own gravity. Over time, her empire collapsed, friends disappeared, investors turned on her. She was convicted of fraud and now faces prison. But the karma didn't come just from the courts. It came from the years she lived in fear of being exposed, from the lies that isolated her, from the regret that likely festers each time she sees her story used as a cautionary tale. Her karma arrived quietly, then all at once. The Stoic response: do not envy their applause. To those living by Stoic virtue, the question is not whether wrongdoers will suffer, but whether you will allow their temporary success to corrupt your own character. The moment you start measuring your worth by how quickly someone else gets what they deserve, you've handed over your peace. Let them have their moment. Let them walk away with the crowd's applause. In time, karma will do its quiet work through isolation, regret, and repetition. You don't need to orchestrate it. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Stand apart. Rise above, trust that silence, patience, and virtue carry a power far more enduring than vengeance. Part 8, let them stay blind, the Stoic power of letting people misunderstand you. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't look like strength at all. It's not loud, it doesn't defend itself, it doesn't explain, it simply lets people think what they want. This, for the Stoic, is one of the hardest disciplines to master, the ability to allow misunderstanding without retaliation. It feels counterintuitive. Human nature begs for recognition, for clarity, for fairness. When someone misjudges you, twists your intentions, questions your integrity, or spreads a false narrative, the impulse to defend yourself can be overwhelming. You want to set the record straight, you want to be seen and understood, but Stoicism teaches something radical. You don't need to be understood to be at peace. In fact, often the pursuit of being understood is the very thing that keeps us from peace. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, faced this dilemma every day. Ruling an empire meant being constantly misinterpreted by senators, citizens, rivals, even friends. And yet in his personal writings, he reminds himself again and again, don't waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not prove you're one, not convince the world you're one, just be one. And that's the essence of this principle. Let them stay blind if that's what they choose. Because if someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of clarification will change their mind. Their perception isn't based on truth, it's based on ego, projection, and fear. It serves them to misread you. It allows them to stay comfortable in their narratives, so the Stoic doesn't chase those stories. The Stoic focuses only on what's in their control, their actions, their reactions, and the values they live by. Look at someone like Keanu Reeves. He's become almost a living Stoic archetype in pop culture. Despite years of personal tragedy, rumors, and misinterpretations by the press, Keanu remains calm. He doesn't post online rebuttals. He doesn't fight back in interviews. He doesn't seek applause. He just lives his life with quiet dignity, generosity, simplicity. Over time, people saw through the noise. They recognized the pattern of his choices, and without him having to say a word, a new reputation emerged, one based on character, not defense. That's the power of letting others stay blind. Their blindness becomes obvious, while your clarity becomes undeniable. Seneca warned against the emotional toll of chasing everyone's good opinion. In letters to Lucilius, he wrote, "A wise man is content with himself, not because he doesn't care what others think, but because he knows the cost of caring too much." There is deep psychological damage in constantly trying to be understood. It fractures your identity. It makes your peace dependent on someone else's perception. It turns your life into a PR campaign instead of a principled journey. And here's the harsh truth: some people need you to be the villain. They need you to be wrong so they can feel right. They need you to look untrustworthy so they don't have to face how they failed you. They need to spin the narrative so they don't have to examine their own behavior. If you try to argue with those people, you validate their need for control. But if you stay silent, you deprive them of fuel. You hold your power. This doesn't mean you let everyone walk all over you. Stoicism is not weakness, it's selective engagement. You address what must be addressed with clarity and firmness, but beyond that, you retreat into your center. Because inner peace isn't found in the external clearing of your name, it's found in the internal clarity of your conscience. There's a reason Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What a radical idea, to accept being misunderstood, not because you're weak or lazy, but because you're free. Because your worth is not up for debate, because your values are not a group project, because your life is not an audition. In modern terms, this is emotional detachment, not indifference but resilience, not coldness but conviction. Let people misunderstand your silence. Let them misinterpret your boundaries. Let them call your healing selfish and your growth arrogance. You don't owe them access to your clarity. That's a privilege, not a right. Instead, let your actions speak over time. Let your integrity outlive their gossip. Let your life become a slow-burning proof of who you really are, and trust that the right people, the ones whose perception matters, will see you without needing a manual. In the end, letting others stay blind isn't about superiority. It's about peace. It's about refusing to get entangled in battles that don't lead anywhere. It's about walking away from the courtroom of public opinion and stepping into the quiet temple of self-trust. Because the Stoic knows you don't have to be seen clearly by everyone to live clearly within yourself. Let them stay blind. You've got better things to do, like becoming everything they said you were. In the end, the most liberating truth is this: you are not obligated to correct every misunderstanding. You are not responsible for the mental narratives that others insist on carrying. What you are responsible for entirely is your response. You get to choose whether you spend your energy proving your character or preserving your peace. And in that quiet space of non-response, you reclaim control of the only thing truly yours, your mind. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, be the living embodiment of your values. Let your actions speak. Let your results echo. Let your silence ring louder than any defense could. So the next time you feel the urge to justify, clarify, or explain yourself to those already committed to misunderstanding you, pause. Choose the higher path, not of superiority, but of sovereignty. Because in Stoicism, the wise do not shout. They simply walk calmly, deliberately, and beyond reach. If this lesson spoke to you, leave a comment below with a moment where you chose stillness over argument. Let's build a space where silence is honored and wisdom is practiced. Subscribe to Unshakeable Calm for more Stoic strategies to strengthen your mind, sharpen your character, and build true inner power.